Hello, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Hacked and Unfiltered. This is your host, Omar Rao, with today's topic cyber fatigue and alert overload, and how attackers hide in plain sight. But before we go into the details here, we need to recap on the previous episode. In episode 7, we covered cyber resilience in the boardroom. We talked about what happens when a cyber incident stops being just a technical issue and becomes a leadership issue. We talked about pressure. We talked about decision making. We talked about communication and why some organizations fall apart, not because they lack tools, but because they lack clarity. When the situation gets loud, they get distorted. If you missed that episode, please go back and listen to it, because today it is a natural next step. So the last episode was about what happened when pressure reaches the leadership. This episode is about what happens when the pressure crushes the defender. And this one matters because as an ethical hacker, I keep seeing the same pattern over and over and over again inside all enterprise customers I talk to. A lot of companies do not just get hurt because they have no products, but they do not get hurt because nobody cared. They get hurt because the defender were overloaded, the signals were buried, and the workflow was probably messy. The attacker knew how to operate inside the noise, and that is the part people need to understand. Most attackers do not walk in with neon signs saying on their back, saying, "I'm here." They slide in quietly. One strange login, one suspicious inbox rule, one OAuth consent, one weird script, or possibly one MFA complaint, or even one help desk ticket. One alert that looks almost like last 20 alerts the analysts already saw that day. That is the battlefield. So when people ask me, Omar, why do teams still miss important things? My answer is simple. Because good people like yourself operating in a bad condition will still miss what matters. And that is not a weakness. That is math. Simple math. A lot of organizations still think that more tools automatically means more security. That sounds like a budget meeting. It sounds good in vendor presentation, but in real life or a real world, many teams are sitting in front of SIEM or EDRs or cloud alerts or identity alerts or even email alerts, even vulnerability feeds, some kind of case queues, dashboards stacked on dashboards. And somehow they're still not able to answer the most important question fast enough. What matters right now? That is a real problem. Believe me, security team do not only need visibility, they need usable visibility. And there is a massive difference between seeing everything and understanding what deserves action. If, let's say, 10 systems are yelling and one of them is telling you something meaningful, then the problem is no longer lack of data. The problem is functional digestion. I'm not talking about the other kind of digestion. I'm talking about the real operational digestion. Can the team actually process what it is seeing in time to make good decisions? Or are they just surviving the queue? That is where alert fatigue becomes dangerous. Now, let's say it in plain English, okay? Alert fatigue is what happens when environment trains the team to stop reacting properly. Too many alerts, too many weak signals, too many false positives, even too many interruptions. Over time, the analysts start moving faster, but not better. And they start making compressed decisions. I call them compressed decisions because they are compressed. They start treating weird as normal. They start seeing patterns of noise so often that when a real compromise finally appears, it probably is wearing the same clothes as false positive, but it does not get their attention. And that is not a small problem. That is a detection problem. That is a response problem. And that is possibly a business risk problem too. Now, let me explain this. As I see it as an ethical hacker, when I look at enterprises, I'm not just asking where the vulnerabilities are. I'm not only looking for at the exposed services or bad identity hygiene or even weak segmentation or even stale permissions or even their cloud configuration. I am interested and I am looking at defenders' friction. I want to know how noisy the environment is. I want to know whether emails, identities, endpoint, cloud, or even help desk are connected in a meaningful way, or whether they are all living separate lives. As an ethical hacker, I want to know how many steps it takes to get a weak signal to a strong conclusion. I also want to know how much manual work analysts still have to do just to understand the basic context. Because attackers benefit from friction. And if I know as SOC is overwhelmed, I do not need to be loud. I need to be careful. I need to stay just below the panic line. I need to look ordinary enough to understand the environment around me, which can help me disappear. And that is the part enterprises keep misunderstanding. And sometimes even they are underestimating it. Attackers do not always beat security with sophistication. Sometimes they beat security with timing. Sometimes they beat security with patience. Even sometimes they beat security because your own system trained your team to ignore the exact patterns they should be focused on. That is your fault. So let me give you a realistic example, okay? A lot of users get phishing emails, right? You get phishing emails, I get phishing emails, everybody gets a phishing emails nowadays. You open up your Gmail, you find so many junk emails in there, right? Imagine an organization which gets hundreds of emails every day. Even they have proof points, they have Mimecast, they have all these different solutions out there, but these phishing emails still go through sometimes. These guys are becoming more and more sophisticated. We already know this. So imagine a user gets a phishing email, not some silly one with broken grammar or a broken grammar or probably nonsense branding, right? Just think about a something which looked legit, a decent one. It captures the credentials. The attacker now has a username and password. Then the identity platform sees the unusual sign-in. Maybe not impossible travel. Maybe nothing flashy. Just unusual enough that it should matter. Then the attackers start MFA fatigue. The user get annoyed and calls from help desk saying something strange is happening with their login. The attacker gets mailbox access. Follow me along. The attacker now gets the mailbox access, which in turn means that inbox rules are created. Now the attacker can take the password, resets the email, and finance threads are reviewed. Then the OAuth ops are get approved. And all that is happening quietly. Meanwhile, just think about from an endpoint tool perspective, some browser activity get alerted, right? Some kind of cloud log is also showing access. But things does not stop there. It becomes a chain. That is one huge compromise chain. Just one. But inside many organizations, those events do not appear as one story. The phishing report lands one queue, probably. The identity signals lands another one. When you look at help desk ticket stays, it's another system. The OAuth consent is visible somewhere else. Each of them are in their own silo. Even endpoint signal become one or more medium alerts. Think about cloud. Cloud activity is buried in normal access patterns. The attacker sees the clean chain. The defenders sees disconnected pieces. That is where things go wrong. And if you are already in the noisy environment, the attacker gains room to breathe, not because the team is weak, because the system is fragmented. And that is why I'm keep telling people that correlation is not just a nice feature. It is the difference between seeing one weird thing and seeing a kill chain. Trust me, enterprises love saying they have visibility. Good. Visibility into what? One stream at a time, I'm assuming? Or visibility that actually connects identity, email, endpoint, SaaS, even cloud activity into something that makes sense under pressure? Because if you cannot connect those dots fast, the attacker is already ahead of you. Trust me, they are ahead of you. And let's take it further, right? Another pattern I see all the time is that what if I see a contractor blind spots all the time. The contractor account gets some kind of compromise. It sees all normal employee. It looks like a normal employee, but sometimes they're not. And because they're a vendor, they're less emotional attention, right? They don't get that much attention from anybody. The attacker logs into SaaS platform. Follow me along. The attacker now gets into the SaaS platform, access the probably shared documents and finds internal architecture notes, learns the naming convention, discover all the service account references, and start testing what that identity can reach. Nothing is loud. Nothing is like movie level dramatic things, okay? Maybe one or two medium severity detection fires. Maybe some of them populates. But maybe there is one suspicious access pattern. Maybe somebody sees one odd device registration. But on the same day, the team is already buried under phishing reports, vulnerability noises, possibly cloud hygiene task, or even leadership asking for status update on a completely unrelated vendor note. That is how attacker wins. Not by blowing through the walls, by moving through a clutter room while everybody sees looking at something else in the meantime. That is the lie enterprises need to stop telling themselves. The team will catch it. That's the lie. The team will catch it. Maybe. But under what conditions? That's the question. And that is a real question. A strong team, in my terminology, a strong team under weak condition will still miss very important things any given day. And if the detections are stale, if the tunings is poor, if the ownership is messy, even the escalation path is unclear, yeah, saying team will catch it is not the confidence, it's wishful thinking. Let me be more direct to you guys. If analyst has manually pulled sign-in context and manually checked mailbox rules, even manually looked up the OAuth grants, let's take it one step further, manually reviewed endpoint histories, even the cloud file access, the attacker is moving through automated system, automated environment, while your defender is still doing digital archaeological 5-tab processes through 2 team Slack messages. That is not a fair fight. And yes, let me add, because that deserves the truth right now, some organization think that they are mature because SOC has giant screens and blinking dashboards and 20 tabs open and one exhausted analyst who looks at those screens in ultra high definition. That is not maturity. In my terminology, it's not. If you go in a NASA room, that is not maturity. That is expensive kiosk with good lighting. In my terminology, in my way, saying simply. The real maturity is much simpler, guys. Can the team tells what matters? Can they understand what it matters? Can they act on without drowning first? That is a test. That is the test. Guys, I've been in this industry for a long time now. I have seen almost everything. But as an ethical hacker, the advice I give enterprises is very practical. First, stop worshiping alert volume. More alert does not mean more awareness, okay? It often means more noise. Start asking which rules actually produce actions. Which detection leads to real investigation? Which ones just waste analysts' oxygen? If rules is firing garbage all day, fix it, tune it, rewrite it, suppress it if needed. Bad detections are not harmless. They train the team in the wrong direction. Second, enrich before analyst touches the case. Do not make your people start every alert blind. Good enrichment should include user risk, possibly role sensitivity, even recent sign-ins, MFAs, inbox rule change, OAuth consents, all that good stuff. The more context analysts get early, the less time they waste reconstructing the basics. Third, connect the domains. Yes, that's a good one. Email, identities, cloud, endpoints, help desk cannot behave like separate islands. Real compromise does not care about your org chart. Period. It does not. The attack is one chain. Your defense has to see the chain, not departments. And if you don't agree with this, I'm sorry. Fourth, you have to also understand cleanup of ownership. You have to clean up the ownership. I cannot tell you how many organizations loses time because nobody is fully sure who owns phishing triage versus identity escalation. Even sometimes they don't even know, cannot make the difference between cloud investigation versus SaaS review. That delay matters. Attacker love hesitation. Fifth, protect analyst focus. This one is important because not every interruption is justified. Not every quick ask is quick. Not every leadership request belongs to in a triage, especially in the middle of triage. If you are a strong defense protector in your organization, protect your people. Deep work is security tool. A distracted analyst is a weaker analyst, and that is just reality. Lastly, I'm going to say, when it comes up to the missed alerts, especially, ask whether your case is diagnosed properly. Do not just jump to a conclusion. Make sure you follow the workflows. And for defenders listening right now, here's my straight advice for tomorrow morning. Take one noisy alert source and probably ask yourself, how often does this fires? How often it is useful? What makes it noisy? What context is missing? What can they automate or enrich before this hits a human queue? Then take one repeated investigation path and ask yourself, why do still manual process has to be done? Why do I have to do so many manual clicks? Where I'm losing all this time, and who should really own the next step? Then ask one question. What wastes your time the most right now? The answer is gold. That answer will give you more than another maturity report, honestly. If you need me to explain this episode simply to somebody who is outside security, say it like this. A security team can have great tools and still miss real threats if there's too much noise. Too many alerts, too many workflows, especially the weak workflows, constant interruption makes it harder to spot what actually matters. Attackers know this, and they often hide inside the noise. Now, if you're in security, this episode feels like too familiar. Good, it should, because too many defenders today are expecting to be superhuman, especially in the system that is badly designed. If you are a leader listening to this, hear me clearly. Do not just ask why something got missed. Ask your team why they were buried under before it got missed. And that is the honest question you can ask. So I know we're going for a long time talking about the same thing. I know this topic is probably the least on people's mind. So let me bring it home. If there's one message I want you to take from today, is this: attacker do not only exploit system, they exploit conditions. Let it resonate. And one of the most dangerous conditions in enterprise security today is defender overload. Too much noise, too much fragmentation, too much correlation, too many weak signal treating like separate stories. And that is how good teams start missing what matters. That is how phishing events become mailbox compromises. And that is how mailbox compromises become SaaS abuse. And that is how SaaS abuse becomes cloud exposure. You see the chain? And this is how something that looks ordinary turns into something expensive. This episode was not just about burnout. It was about enterprise reality. It was about the facts that a tired, fragmented, overload defense is still a vulnerability today. Even nobody writes it. It's in a small architecture deck, but it matters. So, if this episode made you think, do not just move forward from this. Listen to this again. Share it with the SOC lead. Share it with the CISO. Share it with the person who keeps adding tools without asking what analysts are drowning in. Like it, subscribe it, and send it to somebody who needs this conversation. So, before we're going to go and talk about the next topic, that is dear to my heart again, and I want you to please listen to that, episode 9. We're going to talk about one of the biggest battlefields in cybersecurity today. Do you know what that is? Identity. Identity. How one compromised identity turns into privilege abuse, lateral movements, OAuth risk, and even SaaS exposure. We're going to talk about cloud escalations. We're going to talk about enterprise-wide damage and why identity is no longer just about login. It is about a battlefield. Before the next episode, ask your team this question: are we missing the threat because the attacker is advanced, or because our own noise is louder than the signal? If that question makes people uncomfortable, good. Seriously. That usually means that you found the real problem. So thank you very much for once again joining this episode. I look forward to having you in our exciting next episode, where we're going to be discussing identity in more detail and how that matters in the cybersecurity world. Thank you again for joining Hacked and Unfiltered. Until next episode, thank you.